For the last decade, AAA gaming has had a very specific paradigm. Massive open worlds, gritty combat, and hundreds of millions of dollars in budget. But the most technologically impressive open world to focus on this year isn't about slaying gods. It's about a girl in a dress with her cat. And the industry is absolutely terrified of how successful it is. Infinity Nikki is a $100 million bet that the cozy gamer demographic is tired of being treated like a side quest. It's a technical masterpiece that outperforms many serious RPGs. And it's fundamentally changing what games get funded from here on out. Today, we're looking past the gacha and the outfits to see why this game is a Trojan horse for the entire industry. I'm Carrie, and this is why Infinity Nikki is the most important game of the decade. When we talk about Unreal Engine 5, we usually think of some of the most visually ambitious and highly acclaimed games. In Infinity Nikki, that power is directed at something that the industry usually doesn't prioritize: fabric. In most AAA games, even legendary ones, outfits can feel like an afterthought. In Infinity Nikki, every outfit is carefully crafted with its own story. They have weight, drag, and complex collision physics. We're not going to talk about the unicorn right now. To put the scale of this into perspective, there was a joke on Brandon Sanderson's podcast that, from a memory standpoint, the entirety of The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time could practically fit into a single modern-day character skin. So when we're looking at Nikki's next 5-star outfit, we're actually looking at more data and processing power than entire retro worlds. All dedicated to the way that the skirt swishes in the wind or the bangs perfectly bounce. And if you're tempted to call this just a mobile port, look at the credits. This subdirector is Kentaro Tominaga. If that name sounds familiar, it's because he spent 2 decades at Nintendo, most notably as the director of the Breath of the Wild DLC, and a designer on almost every modern Zelda title. This team is led by the person who crafted some of the most beloved and impactful games to date. He brought that Nintendo-level polish to a genre that has been starved for it, and the result is a technical masterpiece that finally treats the cozy audience with the respect of a AAA budget. For decades, the cozy gamer has been one of the most profitable but consistently patronized demographics in the world. While the core gaming market got $100 million epics, this audience, which is largely made up of women and players looking for non-violent escapism, we were served a diet of low-budget sims and indie titles. And don't get me wrong, I love and adore indies, but there's always been a glass ceiling. Infinity Nikki is the first time a studio is doing more than acknowledging this audience. They've respected them with a AAA budget and made them the main priority. We are talking about an untapped billion. This means a massive market that has been underserved. There is a massive global community of players who have been waiting for a game like Infinity Nikki. And Infold just proved that they were right. Especially now, almost 2 years after release, Infinity Nikki is still consistently ranked in the top 50 revenue for gacha games. But we do have to address the elephant in the room: monetization. Infinity Nikki is a gacha game. I understand that that can seem like a red flag for predatory spending, perfectly designed to lure you in with cuteness and empty your wallet, but there is a more complicated truth here. A non-combat, open-world game of this scale, one that costs, again, over $100 million to build and millions more to maintain, likely couldn't get approved under a traditional $60 box-priced model. The gacha model, for better or for worse, is the financial engine that allowed a game this high quality to be greenlit in the first place. The question isn't whether it's a gacha, it's whether the gameplay is good enough to justify the gamble. This is why Infinity Nikki is the ultimate proof of concept. If this game continues to succeed, and the numbers suggest it's doing more than just succeeding, it changes the boardroom conversation at every major publisher. Suddenly, a non-combat open world isn't a risky niche. It's a proven gold mine. We are likely standing at the edge of a new era where high-budget, cozy titles aren't just the exception, but a new standard. Infinity Nikki is the blueprint that tells the industry, stop ignoring us. We are here, we have the numbers, and we deserve AAA worlds too. For decades, the gaming industry has been trapped in a cycle. If a developer walked into a boardroom 5 years ago and asked for $100 million to make a high-fidelity game about a girl in a dress, they would have been laughed out of the room. That is my own assumption, of course, but I feel pretty confident about it. The proof that this kind of game could return a massive investment just didn't exist yet. This was what I believe to be a funding paradox. Investors and publishers are obsessed with safe bets. That's why we have a ridiculous amount of Call of Duty games and 1,000 games that might as well be Call of Duty. When trying to procure funding, they point to the sales of those games as proof of what people want. This one actually isn't an assumption. I asked a friend in the industry about the process of securing funding, and it checks out. Back on topic. For a female and cozy demographic, the logic was likely reversed. We won't fund your cutie patootie AAA game because there's no proof it'll sell. And there's no proof it will sell because we won't fund it. It was like a circular trap designed to keep this entire side of the industry in the indie or mobile leagues, while the hardcore projects got the technical masterpieces. Like I said at the beginning, that is why Infinity Nikki is a Trojan Horse. By self-funding this project and making a massive $100 million gamble, Infold conducted the most expensive social experiment in gaming history. They've created a proof of concept that is now undeniable. Because of Nikki's success, a developer somewhere is finally getting a yes to their non-combat, high-budget project today. I hope, at least. Maybe after I graduate, I'll get a yes on a game that I'd like to make, thanks to Infinity Nikki being the first. It's about smashing the glass ceiling that has kept the cozy demographic as a second-class citizen in the world of AAA gaming. So, is Infinity Nikki just a beautiful dress-up game, or is it the most important title of the decade? For the first time in my life as a future developer and current player, I am seeing a cozy game. It doesn't feel like it's making do with a small budget or limited tech. It's a $100 million statement that says, our stories, our aesthetics, are worth the investment. Just like how Sally the Witch paved the way for magical girl anime, I hope that Infinity Nikki can do the same for the gaming industry. But I want to know what you think. Do you think Infinity Nikki is going to actually change how Western developers look at the cozy genre? Or is this just a one-off miracle from Infold? And more importantly, do you think the AAA budget justifies the gacha mechanics? Drop a comment below because I want to see how we're feeling about the shift. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe. I love sharing what I learned through studying game development. Thank you for watching, stay cozy, and I'll see you in the next one. I will throw out there before I go though that I don't think that Animal Crossing New Horizons is playing this role. I do think Animal Crossing New Horizons was important in defining the genre, but I think this is the first game of its kind. If you feel what I'm saying, I can go more into that in a different video.